Today we're talking about the Adidas Adios 4 after 100 miles. 10.95 miles, 7 minutes, 55 seconds per mile. Enjoying my run commute along the Chicago lakefront today, and with today's run, I'm over 100 miles in the Adidas Adios 4. But before I get into my thoughts today, I want to go over some disclosures. This is a pair of shoes that was sent to me for review by Roadrunner Sports, but neither they nor Adidas is paying me to make this video, and no one's going to get a chance to see the video or the footage or hear my thoughts before you guys get to see it on YouTube. Now, with the disclosures out of the way, let's talk about the Adidas Adios 4. This is a marathon road racing shoe from Adidas. It has a thin layer of boost along the midsole, continental rubber on the outsole, and a mesh upper on top. I absolutely love the upper on this shoe. This is probably one of the best fitting uppers that I've experienced in a very long time, if not one of the best. I absolutely love the mesh. It's extremely breathable, which was a little bit of a problem when I first got the shoe about a month or so ago, when the temperatures were still pretty cold in Chicago. But now that things are starting to warm up, and I also took this with me on my trip out to San Diego last week, in the warmer temps, definitely appreciate the breathability. The material overall is really thin. Even in the heel collar area, there's a little bit of structure back here for heel lockdown. And overall, it's the right amount of material plus a little bit of rigidity to keep everything really locked down onto my foot. It really feels like it's just an extension of my foot when I'm wearing it. Aiding that is the fact that it's a very light shoe, so it doesn't feel like there's a weight at the bottom of my foot. It just feels like I'm running. The thin layer of boost is also a real surprise to me. Now, I ran in the Ultraboost Parley last year, and I felt that the shoe was a little bit mushy and a little bit heavy. But this, I don't feel that at all. The much thinner layer of boost here is actually really, really nice, especially in the midfoot area. I'm getting a lot of road feel, so I'm getting a sense for the contours of the road, the incline, the decline, all the nuances. It's a really refreshing feeling to me, although it does get to be a little bit fatiguing, and you have to be a little bit more mindful of your footstrike when you're running in the shoe. Although there is a little bit more boost in the heel, this is definitely not a shoe for heel crashers. And I definitely found myself having to focus on how my foot is striking and trying to avoid excessive heel striking. Not that you have to avoid hitting the heel in this shoe. Definitely on the longer miles, you're going to be hitting the heel at least a little bit, and having that extra layer of boost, at least compared to the midfoot and forefoot, is definitely a nice thing to have here. Now, I've run in this shoe from a variety of distances, from 6 miles all the way up to 20 miles, in a variety of terrains, from road all the way to, I guess that would be considered light trail, although it's, for me, it's considered a heavy trail, because I just don't really spend all that much time on the trails. And this shoe actually did really well on all the surfaces and all the distances that I ran in. Would I recommend this as a trail shoe? Absolutely not. I probably could have picked a whole handful of other shoes that would have done a much better job at this. But in terms of me going on a trip where I was going to be running on a variety of surfaces and I didn't want to fill a suitcase full of shoes, I mean, I did want to fill a suitcase full of shoes, but I didn't want to for the sake of not bringing too much stuff with me on the trip. This was a good kind of all-around shoe. I wouldn't necessarily call it a daily trainer though, just because the forefoot boost is a little bit thin and the heel isn't all that forgiving, but it's certainly something that you can take on longer distances and has a little bit more range than I would normally consider for something that's labeled as kind of a road racing shoe. And so I definitely think that this is something that I could run a marathon with. it doesn't feel like that when you kind of first put it on and you're feeling how much road feel there is and how much road kind of contact and impact you're feeling. But when I took it on the 20-mile run, the limiting factor was definitely me and not the feeling in my feet. And so definitely feel like this is a shoe that can go the distance with you. Although I think for most people, this shoe is going to really be optimal and ideal in terms of racing from the 10K all the way up to the half marathon distance. I think for most people, that's where this shoe is going to really feel the best. Although for a lot of you, also racing a road 5K in it is going to be fine, or racing a road marathon is also going to be fine too. Or if you have a race where it's a little bit of mix between dirt road and paved road, I think this will also do really well. Now, in terms of some of the downsides of running with a racing shoe or a racing shoe for 100 miles is it's not designed for longevity, and that's definitely showing on this shoe here. I don't think I've seen a shoe kind of not fall apart, but wear down as quickly as this, but I'm trying to give it a little bit of the benefit of the doubt because it is a road racing shoe. There is continental rubber on the bottom, on the outsole, and it's super grippy. I really like continental rubber, but the downside is that the grippiness is that the rubber wears down quickly, and that's certainly the case here. In this midfoot, kind of to the forefoot area where a lot of my foot strike tends to happen, the rubber is not worn down, but it's definitely getting there, and you can see the difference between these high wear areas in terms of how deep the nubs are or no longer are versus all the way in the top or in some of these other areas where there isn't quite as much wear. So I can kind of see how things used to be, and I can see how things are now. The other thing is the boost is getting really discolored, and it's starting to kind of crack along some of the seams. Maybe not crack, but at least I'm seeing the seams a lot more visibly. And it also kind of leads to this feeling where if I push on the boost, it's giving a little bit more than I'm comfortable with it giving. And I don't know if it was always that way or just looking at it now, this just feels a little bit too squishy. And so I'm a little bit concerned that a lot of miles over 100 might not make it all that suitable for racing anymore. So I don't know what the ultimate longevity of this shoe is. But then again, I ran a 20-mile run in it just last week, and I was absolutely fine. And so granted, I wasn't trying to race that distance, but I was able to get in the miles without a problem. So maybe these problems are simply cosmetic. Maybe these problems really aren't problems at all, but just some things to note, some things that kind of caught my eye as I'm looking at the shoe at the 100-mile mark. Other high wear areas, which is the right back of the heel, very much worn down. Which is pretty common for me. That's where a lot of the rubbing in terms of outsole rubber tends to happen for me. So not too surprised about that, not too shocked about that. I'm a little bit more surprised about the rubber wear that's going on in the forefoot. In terms of the wear in the upper, again, is just rock solid. There's a little bit of a dimple that's happening here. I don't know if that's just creasing that's happening because of the way my foot is kind of bending the shoe or what's going on, but that's merely cosmetic, and everything else just seems to be just absolutely perfect, except for the fact that like the Boost logo that was on the insole is worn out. It's hard to tell looking from the upper that this is a shoe that has 100 miles on it. It just looks absolutely pristine, which is amazing for me because I always tend to beat up my shoes pretty hard. And so overall, I'm pretty happy with the way that this shoe is holding up. I'm very happy with the performance of this $140 racing shoe from Adidas. Just keep in mind though, it's not going to be as long lasting as another daily trainer might be because it is intended for road racing. And so you're going to see a lot of that in the wear pattern in the continental rubber. And for me, I usually tend to think that it's the cushioning that goes before the rubber goes. So if your rubber is worn out, you're way past the point of when you should have replaced the shoes. But in this case, because the rubber started out so thin, which I do appreciate because of the ultimate purpose of the shoe, which is to be a road marathon racing shoe, but because that initial rubber was so thin, it's probably going to be the first thing to go and the main reason why you end up replacing this shoe. But ultimately, this is my first time running in the Adidas Adizero Adios, and I just absolutely love this shoe. It's also really comfortable for me to walk around in it. It's one of my favorite casual shoes, and so I might just keep it around for that reason, even after the shoe kind of passes its lifespan because I do like the level of boost that's in this shoe for walking around casually. Now you would think that for walking around casually, Ultraboost would be the way to go, but then again, I sometimes find that Ultraboost is just a little bit too heavy, and this seems to strike a nice balance. The lightweightness of it with a little bit of boost when you're walking around. I've really been enjoying commuting, walking around, running errands, picking up the girls, doing all my other daily life activities in this shoe as well. So it's a good all-arounder, except for the fact that it's just not a daily trainer. So hopefully that information is helpful for you. If you guys have run in the Adidas Adizero Adios, whether it's this version or any previous versions, I'd love to hear some of your long-term or longer-term feedback on how it's been holding up for you. Now, before I go for today, I want to remind you guys about the charity runner for this week. This week, we're talking about Haley Beck. She's going to be running the London Marathon in just a couple of days, this weekend, in fact. And she's raising money for Children First, an organization in the UK that helps children with severe emotional and psychological difficulties. A very worthy cause, and I've donated £70 to her fundraising efforts. And I'll post links in the description in case you learn more. Thanks so much for watching, everybody, and thanks for making it to the end of the video, and I will see you guys tomorrow.
Yo, what's going on?